Hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Age-Wise Boston, sponsored by Central Boston Elder Services. I am your host, Mike Kincaid. And, you know, I realize this summer has been like one giant series of Mike's guilty pleasures, things that Mike enjoys. And from talking with a lot of you guys out there, you got to know, it warms my heart when I run into you guys and I go, hey, I saw the show on, and yeah, I also like that. So this is going to be one of them shows. This is a guilty pleasure. So you guys know I do the comic book things, and I'm at this comic book convention, and I stumbled across an artist. I got to tell you, her work made me stop and look, and then we were having a conversation, and I said, would you please come on my TV show? And so I'm going to introduce you to Jackie. I'm going to put you...
Musto.
Musto. I was going to say Musto.
That's like the Italian way of saying it, so honestly, either one works for me. Yeah.
All right, but Jackie Musto, Jackie, help us out here, and the book that we've got, and they'll probably show it also on the thing, is called, well, we have two different series.
Yes.
So we have K and P.
Yes. So that one's about a girl whose best friend is a skeleton, but no one can see the skeleton but her. So the mystery of it being, is she just seeing things, or is there more fantastical circumstances going on that one?
Okay, hold on a second, Jackie.
Yes.
Her best friend is an imaginary friend.
Maybe. Asterix.
All right, but wait, why a skeleton?
Why a skeleton? Because it's the most absurd thing I could think of, to be honest. It has a lot to do with where he comes from as to why he's a skeleton, but it's just, when I was a kid, I had a million imaginary friends. You know, there were horses and cats and all sorts of ridiculous
lions
nonsense.
And tigers and bears.
Right, right. And then it became to the point where even inanimate objects started to have a personality, like, oh, you know, the bottle opener is angry because he's getting used all the time, and then the sous knife in the kitchen is not so happy. You know, like it sort of developed these personalities for things, and I thought it would be really interesting if the character in the story had a imaginary friend who's sort of an unconventional creature. So it was a skeleton, and then of course there's the joke, the skeleton in the closet,
skeleton, right.
where she finds him when she's a little kid. So.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Wait. So this is her imaginary friend who's grown up with her. Yeah,
she found him. They moved to a new house when she is pretty small. She's like 4 or 5. She's just about to start kindergarten and go to school, and her parents move into a suburban neighborhood kind of outside of the city. And she is in her bedroom the first night that they move in there, and this is in the first book, so it's not too spoilery.
I was going to say, yeah. Let's not do a spoiler alert.
It's not too spoilery. So P, the name of the skeleton, he comes up out of the closet and he like jumps out and tries to scare her, and then she laughs at him. And he just can't believe it. You know, his job as a skeleton is to be the most terrifying thing ever.
You're a nightmare.
Right, and this little girl is just like, let's be friends, and he's like, okay, I guess so, and then they just were inseparable after that. So she just has this interesting sort of camaraderie with this really weird being that she found in her closet. So. All
right. Since you opened up the door,
okay. All right.
Let's walk through it. What does P stand for?
Without being spoilery.
Okay, but in that case, never mind.
Yes.
Never mind, because I want to read it, because I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I want to read it so that I can call you up and go, really, Jackie?
Well, I can answer the question somewhat. P is basically everybody's greatest friend that they could ever be, because growing up and not having somebody who could be there for you no matter what is a really kind of sad way to grow up. So he kind of provides that stability for her. You know, when no one else believes her that she can see him, or maybe nobody believes in what she can do, he's there for her. And when she gets older, he doesn't really leave. He's still able to be there. You know, when she gets her own apartment and they move in together, he does her laundry while she's in class, and maybe he'll make dinner. So when she comes home tired from a long day of classes, she doesn't have to worry about that. He's like the best roommate you could ever have. Yeah.
But he's not real. Okay, all right. All right, so let's, and this is the door that you opened up, so we'll walk in. Let's talk about Jackie as a child.
Yes.
Did you used to just doodle these inanimate objects that you brought to life?
Obsessively. There was a point where my mother had to sit down with me in sort of my play area art space, and we had to go through my artwork. I was probably like 8 or 9, and there was a pile of papers that was bigger than the room. Like, it was just full from floor to ceiling, and we had to go through everything because there was just so much drawing. She's like, you have to just keep the ones that you really like, and we have to get rid of the rest, which wasn't painful. Which wasn't painful for me, because I just drew so much that I really did just kind of cycle through them, keep the stuff that I was really super interested in, and we kind of recycled the rest of it because it was just too much. My parents were actually a lot more attached to my artwork than I am. It's funny. I remember being in college, and after I'd graduated, I had 7 or 8 portfolios full of, you know, just the practice drawings and stuff. And they're like, oh, we can't get rid of those. Those are your, I'm like, burn it in a fire. I don't ever want to see it again. It was just kind of like, get rid of it. So my artwork, except for kind of the finished product, is not less precious to me, but I'm willing to give it to people or to understand that, you know, it was a practice and it's not the final thing. So I don't know. It was never really attached to it. I was attached to the character. The character's up here. That'll never go away. You know, the sketchbook and my brain are the 2 places that I'll always keep. I still have a big stack of sketchbooks that I won't get rid of. But
I'm also willing to bet you also have a big stack of notebooks.
Oh, yes. Well, the sketchbooks are really my notebooks. I actually write straight into them. When I'm doing my scripting and that sort of thing, I'll kind of have my 2 big comic pages at the top of it, and then my script will be right below it, and then I kind of X out and move things around and do that, but it's all in my sketchbook. So,
so you're the precocious 8-year-old with a wide variety of friends.
Yes, kind of. Yeah.
Be it as it may, they're still your friends.
That's true. It's true.
Well, okay. Let me ask this question then, because you know, right off the bat, when you were describing that, you want to know what came to my mind? I'm a big fan of Winnie the Pooh.
Yes.
And the whole Winnie the Pooh storyline is Christopher Robin's imagination.
Yes. Yeah, it's true. It's a lot like that, I think, that I always had a story or a character or something like that for every situation. I'd be sitting in the car going on a 3-hour car ride to Connecticut to see my dad's parents, and you know, I'd be imagining a unicorn running outside the window as we go. It was never a moment where I wasn't thinking of a story. And I just thought everybody was like that. Growing up, to be honest, I really did think that just everybody always daydreamed all of the time, to the detriment of being in class with teachers and everything else. So I just assumed that was everybody, but maybe not.
So you're in school. You're an older Jackie now.
Yes.
You're unique.
Sure. Yes.
You're unique. How do you explain Jackie to people?
See, if we're talking about high school Jackie, she doesn't need any explanation. She's very loud and very obstinate and very up in your face.
Okay. So you're the rebel.
I'm the rebel. I'm the rebel in the group of kids who don't get in trouble. Like, that's the best way to describe it. I am the rebel who doesn't smoke or drink or do drugs, because that's wrong. And, you know, grow up in the 80s, you know, don't do drugs or your eggs in a frying pan or something.
Just say no.
Yeah, just say no. It's part of that whole goofy generational thing. But I never really wanted to get in trouble because my mom was kind of terrifying in the most loving way possible. She's like, you know, I brought you into this world. I can take you out of it again.
There you go.
So I never really did anything wrong growing up. It sounds so lame. That's why I said Kay is a much more interesting version of myself, because she's willing to take a lot more risks and kind of get in trouble. But I had a group of friends who were really cool, and I was rebellious in a very safe way.
And that's why when we first met, and I'm going to hold up the volume 2.
Yeah.
When we first met, and I was asking you about this, and I got to tell you, the first thing that came to my mind is, I'm looking at Kay's pink hair, I'm looking at your pink hair, and I said, so is this autobiographical?
A little bit, yeah. It definitely is. There's true facts of things that happened in there that I bring to it, because I think it brings a little sort of reality to an otherwise kind of unreal situation, give some truth to it. But in a way, she's kind of like the person, as more of an adult, I wish I had been growing up, in a fashion. You know, she's really confident in a way that she kind of understands herself a little bit better than I did. You know, she's very open with her sexuality, and she's very sort of confident that, you know, P is always there for her.
He's her backup.
Right. So if anybody else is ever like, oh, well, I think you're dumb or I don't like you, she's like, whatever, I don't need you. That's fine. I've got my friend. And growing up, I felt like I had a lot of friends who were really cool people, but, you know, sometimes you're not sure if they have your back entirely. So you have to kind of be a little more cautious about that. You know, I definitely had my sort of posse that I rolled with, but, you know, cliquey things can sometimes double back on you and double cross you. So you got to kind of watch yourself there. P is not like that. He's always there.
So, and you're not that old. So
thank you.
Where I'm going is you're not that far removed from those click people.
Yeah.
So anybody ever call you up and go, yeah, Jackie, just read the new book.
Ooh.
It didn't happen like that.
Not yet. I actually, it's a funny thing. I run Kickstarter programs to fund these, and one of the upper tier rewards is, you know, you can be in the book as a character. And my dad jokingly said, you should do it so you can either be in the book or you can donate that much so you'll never appear in the book. So a lot of the people who have appeared in there who are real people, which I'm not saying who you are,
We're
so
not
you better
naming
read the
names.
book, are people from college, because she's in college in the book, so it has a lot to do with those particular times. We do a couple of flashbacks, but usually the only people we see in the flashbacks are kind of not her friends' children. They're just other children she goes to school with. So there's a couple people in the book who are college friends of hers that are real people, or based off of real people.
So on the flip side,
yes.
Have you got that call yet saying, hey, Jackie, I want to be in the book. Remember when we did ...
No.
And you find yourself going, you know, it really wasn't that exciting.
It really wasn't that exciting. I can make it exciting, though. That's the best part. No, actually, it's funny. I think my friends read the book, but a lot of them are either artists themselves or at least kind of know artists well enough not to be buggy about that sort of thing. They're not going to try and be like, oh, insert me into the comic because it'll be funny. They're willing to see how I'm going to place them in there, I guess. So that should be kind of fun.
Now, okay, so first of all, I would be wrong if I didn't ask you to tell folks how to get in touch with you and also to look at your body of work.
Yes, so I am on pretty much every social media thing that there is. So Facebook, Jackie Musto Illustration on Facebook, at KNP on Twitter, knp.tumblr. Usually if you just look up KNP, you'll find me pretty easily. Pretty much everything on that has me attached to it. So that's pretty much the best way to find me. Or through the webcomics. KNP's website is knp.com, and Lady Skylark's one is ladyskylark.com, and that attaches to all my social media.
Which we're going to talk about Lady Skylark in a
moment.
Sure. This is a spoiler alert, and so I'm going to say to everybody out there that's a KNP fan, quick,
spoilers.
You know, mute the TV so that you don't find out about this. What's going to happen to Kay?
What's going to happen?
No, wait, no. What's going to happen to P?
What, at the end?
Well, is there, you know, where do you see this story going? That's the question I'm asking.
Well, as I said to one of my students, I teach as well as doing this, she avidly reads my comics. If I come in and do something that she doesn't like, she's like, I can't believe you did that this week. So I always have her as my barometer. But she goes, well, how does the story end? And I go, well, I know how Kay dies, if that's what you're asking.
Really?
But that's just because I know her whole life story, and I've kind of planned that all out. But I don't think the book's going to go that far. I think that I have an understanding of how at least this chapter of the story ends, and then I might do small little things afterwards there, because you know, you create these universes and you do the what ifs to eternity. But that doesn't mean that that's appropriate for the story context of it. I mean, there's so much stuff in this world that I find really interesting or I think would make a really cool story, but it doesn't fit with that. So it gets filed in the little later column, and then maybe I'll do some side stuff. Like there's a lot of other characters in the book who could have little short stories of their own, because they're really, yeah, exactly. They're all very interesting. And of course, if anybody's familiar with the comic industry, you know there's a lot of spin-offs in the comic industry. Absolutely. So.
All right, so between you and I.
Yes.
Does Kay end up happily ever after?
Yes, but not in her own way. In a Kay way.
In a Kay way.
In a Kay way. Okay. It's not going to be like Hollywood ending, you know, and then she gets married or anything really awful like that. She ends up good for Kay, which is just how it should be for her, which hopefully everybody else will enjoy, because it's very infrequently that I get to have a nice ending for the characters in my story. I'm kind of a heartthrob for the tragic.
Oh my God.
So I have a lot of characters that end up, you know, Shakespeare'd into oblivion, where they're just like, and then they have that death moment where they kind of pass and go. So.
But they go out glamorously.
Glamorously. Kay's just not that kind of character. I relate to her a lot in ways because, you know, I imagine this, you know, God deity being showing up her door and being like, Kay, I'm here to, you know, take you to go save the world. And she's just like, I have an English paper due tomorrow. Here, hold on, let me call up this person and you can talk to them instead. Like, that's her.
Here's Bruce Willis's number.
Right, exactly.
Right. So let's, and then we go to the world of swashbuckling.
Yes.
Come on, where did this come from?
It's because
wait,
two reasons.
We got to tell folks the name of the book.
Okay, The Adventures of Lady Skylark, and this one is the first installment, and the Queen's Treasure. So that one is really fun. So Lady Skylark is still kind of fantastical because that's my genre, but it's completely on the other end of the spectrum. It's a steampunk sky pirate adventure comic because it's wonderful fun.
No, I'm going to show just how naive I am. I just recently, this past weekend, was introduced to steampunk.
Oh, yeah.
So for folks out there, what the heck? So
steampunk is essentially Victorian times when steam power was still a big thing. And it's a what-if scenario. What if steam power was what went forward instead of gas?
Right, okay.
And so all the inventions are very, you know, big coggy wheels and steam pipes and all of that sort of business.
Metal and iron.
Right. And typically the Victorian fashion carries through even if it's sort of modern day steampunk, like steampunk in the 2000s. It would still kind of have a Victorian twist. It's sort of a derivative of cyberpunk, which was really big in the 80s and early 90s and that sort of thing. So it's sort of an offshoot of that. But the really important thing about steampunk is actually about momentum and movement, and not just in a physical way. Like, you have the ships and the devices that propel people through the world physically, but they're also a vehicle to socially or economically propel people. And that's the part that I find really interesting. Like, Lady Skylark is a pirate, right? And the crux of the beginning of the book is she loses her ship. So her vehicle to carry herself and to propel herself monetarily is cut off instantaneously. So the whole book is essentially about her trying to regain that through a little bit of manipulation and cunning, because she's a pirate after all. So, but that's a really interesting point to me, is it's not just gears glued onto a top hat. It's really about you know, working class people who are intelligent, using that intelligence or wits to kind of move themselves socially up to a higher standard.
It's being creative.
Yeah, very.
So I guess the next question that comes to mind is that this is unlike Kay, where you can have a flashback and go, oh yeah, I remember blah blah blah. This is totally in your imagination.
Yes, absolutely. And this is co-created with Chris Parent, who is the writer of this. Chris actually used to be kind of like my booth buddy. He would come with me, and he's also kind of my sounding board for K&P whenever I'm like, hey, does this sound pretty cool to you? You know, I kind of use him as a sounding board, and he would come to the conventions and be like, this is really cool. I want to get in here and do stuff, and he's also an artist.
Okay.
And so I'm like, okay, how about we come up with this idea for a story in a world, and you do the script, and I'll do the art. So we talk about the whole thing, and then he works on the script, and I do the art for that. So that's how that kind of came into being there. But it's just fun to be able to just completely invent something that has no necessary bounding in reality. It just has to be exciting and interesting.
Which leads me to ask the question, are there boundaries in something like this?
To some extent. There's no magic. There's sort of pseudoscience. There's alchemy in the world, but there's no magic like, I'm going to pull out a fireball and throw it at you. It's not kind of like
Rocky,
that.
watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat.
Yeah.
Which brings me to, so were you a science geek back in the day? Or was your partner a science geek?
Not really. His brother is a biochemist of some crazy genius level stuff, but neither of us are super into it. I find science fascinating from a very rudimentary outside point of view. Like, I look at pictures for Pluto and just kind of sit there and geek out about the idea that we can take pictures of something so far away. But
and by the time it gets to us.
Right. But I don't have any sort of critical, collegiate level understanding of it, but I do enjoy the idea of it. I think I know enough about general mechanics and physics and that sort of thing. But that leads to a really good point that I'd like to make. a lot of times people look at an artist and assume that this, the arts are the only things that you look at and that you do. And I would encourage anybody who's looking to become an artist out there to sort of look into things that you wouldn't assume would be part of your wheelhouse, like science and that sort of thing, because you never know when that's going to be a point of inspiration. When I go to do backgrounds or objects for this book, I have to go do a lot of research into mechanics to understand what these things need to look like to sort of draw them with that point of realism. It's sort of, the research for K&P is already done because I went through it. Right. This I have to do a lot more footwork on. This is actually a lot more labor intensive for me to do than K&P.
So, and this one here, you're the artist. So I guess the question that I would be asking if I was watching this at home is, so who was your inspiration? Not just for Lady Skyhawk, but for just to become an artist. Back in the day when you were that 8-year-old girl banging out imaginary friends on paper, who did you want to say, I want to draw like? At some point, who did you say, wow, I'd like to draw like, not like to be them, but I want to draw like them?
That's a hard question for me to answer. I was actually very insular as a child, which is the worst way to be an artist. I was very much stuck in a vacuum, and I was just looking at what I was doing. It wasn't until I got sort of in the upper levels of high school and college that I think I really started understanding that I can't just draw the things that I think look wicked cool. Like I would draw characters from video games, or I would draw manga or whatever else was really popular at the time. And I sort of realized when I got to college that you have to look beyond those things, kind of like what I was saying before. But when I was a kid, I really enjoyed looking at everything. I tried to watch as much visual media as possible. I actually, and this is probably going to destroy my geek cred, I actually didn't read a lot of comics growing up.
Oh, good Lord, stop, just stop.
I know, I'm really bad, but I watched a lot of movies and animation. The Last Unicorn is like that VHS tape is worn to threadbare. I've watched that so many times. I loved that movie. So I was really actually more of an animation buff growing up, but animation's really hard to do by yourself.
And it takes forever.
It does. This is kind of like the closest that I could get to it myself without needing a whole crew of people, so.
All right, so Jackie, our time is just about up.
Oh no.
And so my last question, well, before I ask the question, one more time, how do folks get in touch with you, or if they want to check out Lady Skyhawk or Lady?
So, just like that, ladyskylark.com, which camera am I looking at? There we go. Ladyskylark.com is how to get to her, and then knp.com is the easiest way to get to both the webcomics there, and then if you pretty much put K&P in front of Tumblr or after an @ sign to go to Twitter, that's the best way to get me. Also on Facebook, Jackie Musto Illustration at Facebook, or however that.
30 seconds. If they don't remember anything else about this conversation, what do you want folks to remember?
I hope that you remember K&P. I'm sort of less important than my comics, I think. I think the comics really kind of speak for me more than I can speak for myself. I tend to kind of not be able to articulate myself really well sometimes, but I hope the comics and the visuals speak for themselves.
I think you've done an amazing job of articulating yourself. And Kay.
Good.
Wait, what's the name of our swashbuckler?
Tamari is her real name, but she goes by Lady Skylark. So.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
All right. And my final thought, I keep telling you guys, you never know who's going to show up here on Age-Wise Boston. But Kay, I almost called you. Jackie said something that I'm going to follow up on, which is, there's nothing too crazy. Follow your dreams and write it down. My name is Mike Kincaid. This is Age-Wise Boston. Thanks for hanging out with Jackie and I, and I'll see you guys around the neighborhood. Bye-bye, everybody.